Hey guys, Condavour here. Now this is a BRN-180, and I've owned 4 different BRN-180s in the last 4 years. Now, you might think that sounds a little crazy, and it kind of is in a couple ways, but the BRN-180 had a tough teething period initially in its production. And a lot of the issues got corrected by the Gen 2, and so we're going to go over some of the history of the BRN-180 and its issues, then my current thoughts, and what could currently be improved on the BRN-180. So first off, let's start with the history. The BRN-180 is based off of, and it's kind of a spiritual successor to the AR-18, where, now I'm not trying to say it's a replacement for the AR-18, I'm saying that people wanted an AR-18 that fit on a AR-15 lower, or somebody did, and it's not a bad idea. You get a short stroke piston system, you get a dual guide rod bolt carrier that is contained within the upper receiver, you get the option of having a folding stock, when you can fold it right, there we go. I pulled it in the wrong spot. And you get just kind of the coolness of it not being an AR-15. Because let's be honest, guys, a lot of things get purchased now because they're not AR-15s among people that have a lot of guns. This wasn't really ever meant to be like a duty rifle, I don't think. I think this was always meant to be an enthusiast gun. It's meant to be something that you can tinker with, you can change things on, use AR-15 parts with a different system, and get different reactions out of suppressor combos and just whatever you want to do. Now with mine, I kind of went for a little bit of a retro look, as you can probably tell, but you don't have to if you do these, or if you do a build with one of these, or you put one of these together. But basically, the BRN-180 has had 2 major generations, and then they keep adding new calibers onto the 2nd generation. So let me talk about my time owning an early BRN-180. I bought a BRN-180 in early 2019. I paid full price. I think I used one of their online coupons or something as well, but I paid for it, just the upper receiver. And I got it a couple months later. And when I got it, I took it to the range and I shot it and I thought it was great. Then I took it to the range again, shot a couple hundred rounds through it, and my accuracy went to crap. My ejection got weird. When I got home, I was cleaning it and I heard a clunk in the handguard when I was trying to move things around a little bit. And I realized that the barrel had come loose. Now to explain what I mean by the barrel came loose, let me show you something about this gun. Now the BRN-180 uses a trunnion that's attached to the upper receiver here. So this block right here is the trunnion. This is the handguard retainer, and we'll talk about that later. But this is the trunnion. The trunnion has the locking lugs for the bolt in it. Now the barrel is threaded into the trunnion so that your locking lugs are here, the barrel threads in. So if your barrel isn't torqued properly and it starts to unthread, it starts to back off, you start to get more headspace. Loose. But I can rotate it. You can see it. Yeah. That's the loose barrel wobbling on the threads is why my accuracy was bad. The headspace increasing is why my ejections started getting weird. So anyway, chalked it up to a lemon. It's a new gun. They made a mistake. This one wasn't torqued enough. Contact Brownells, they're just like, yep, here, we'll send you a new one. I ended up having to wait a few weeks on getting the new one, but I didn't want a refund. They offered me a refund. I didn't want the refund because I loved how this thing shot before that. Second one showed up. Really excited, went and shot it. A couple hundred rounds. This time I dumped probably 250 in one range trip, and barrel came loose again. Exact same symptoms, exact same thing happened. This time I got a little bit dirty with it, I'm not going to lie. I went to the forums, and I made a post on the forums saying, hey, I've had 2 of these, and both of them have had the barrels come loose. Here are the serial numbers on the other side of the receiver. And that got me some attention because I immediately got emails from Brownells, who is of course the name on this, PWS, who manufactures these, and FM Products, who I believe helped with design. I don't know, they might help manufacture some of this too. But Brownells, FM Products, and PWS all emailed me and said, hey, we want to get you fixed immediately. We want to get this sorted. I said, great. Okay, we decided send it to PWS. So I sent it to PWS. But I think before I even sent it, I already had a tracking number that was heading towards me of the replacement upper because they were that eager to get me a replacement. The replacement, I'm going to call it the Gen 1.5 because what they did is they took a Gen 1 and they pinned the barrel at the bottom. And you can see there's a blind pin on the bottom of that trunnion. And that barrel never came loose. I shot that thing like crazy. I put at least 2,500 rounds through that gun. Ran great. But it developed a new problem, and that new problem was something that also got updated with the Gen 2, and that was the handguard. The handguard on the Gen 1s used to have this really cool clip that would go in front of the upper receiver. Now, unfortunately, it was cool, but it just didn't work well for keeping the upper receiver and the handguard up in front from wobbling, because you had to have that motion in the handguard to allow the removal of the clip and the removal of the handguard itself. Now, what was really cool is that the clip was held in using the dual guide rods that normally house the recoil springs on this system. And that you had to pull those guide rods out before you could get the clip out. So it was a kind of toolless way to remove your handguard, which I thought was neat. Now, the problem was, with a bunch of rounds shot, a bunch of times of me pushing back on the vertical foregrip at the front here, and just maneuvering the gun around, it eventually developed wear in that clip system that allowed the handguard to clunk back and forth. And I found that that clunk was actually enough that it would change my zero with the iron sights, because I'm using iron sights on the front and rear of this gun, that there was a little bit of rotation to that clunk as well, which would cause me to lose my zero depending on how I held the gun, which was not great. I contacted PWS and they were eager to send me a Gen 2. And they sent me a Gen 2 BRN-180, and I've had it ever since. I think I've had this thing for at least 2 years, maybe a little bit more at this point, and I've shot the crap out of this thing. I don't abuse it. I clean my guns probably on average every 500 to 1,000 rounds through them. But it has been wonderful to shoot. The Gen 2, they really fixed a lot of they fixed all the problems that were caused by the Gen 1. There still are some issues, and we'll go over them in a minute, but the Gen 2 fixed a lot. Now, the easiest way, in case you're looking to check to see if a gun that you're like buying used or something is a Gen 1 or a Gen 2, is to look at the handguard mount. Because if you have the set screw up front, right here, if you have a set screw, it's a Gen 2. If you have a clip that goes across, that sticks out the sides, that's a Gen 1. Now, the Gen 1s aren't necessarily bad. Obviously, if you get one that's a little bit aged, so it's past, maybe it's into the summer of 2019 manufacture, you're not going to have the barrel issues. There's even a check that they have, a method of checking to see if your trunnion is newer or updated, to see if you're going to have the barrel torque issues. But if you don't have the barrel torque issues, Gen 1s honestly work great, other than the handguard can develop that clunk. Now, it takes a lot of use for the handguard to develop that clunk, and honestly, if you're using just irons at the back here, you might not even care about it. But, or not irons, but like an optic on the back, you might not even care about it. But if you're using irons, it's a big deal if your front sight post is moving as you pull and push on the handguard up front. Anyway, guys, the Gen 2, as I said, sorted out a lot of issues. Let me show you the two major wear issues that I've seen on this gun that maybe aren't even that big of a deal, but I need to mention them because they are things that have worn that aren't acting quite right anymore. So first off, we have the dust cover. Now watch this. I'm gonna close it. I'm not gonna hit the dust cover, I'm gonna tap down here. There it goes. Oh, now it won't close. Oh, there it goes. The dust cover, and often when you're holding it and you jiggle it, it'll open up. So it's not really great if you're trying to carry this and not get dust in it or not get crap in it, because it just pops open. This is something I could probably fix with a file if I cared enough. I do not really care that much, but this is definitely something that is wearing out. It's getting some wear. Now, the old design, they upgraded this design of this dust cover a bit for the Gen 2, and they added this ramp that would interface with the bolt so that as the bolt comes back, it doesn't whack this anymore. It pushes it open as it should. So it does get out of the way. My last one, I actually had issues of the bolt handle hitting this and doing some. Second one is a little bit surprising if you're not ready for it. It's if you're disassembling it. Okay, so our bolt carrier is all the way forward. What I'm going to do, I'm actually going to pull the mag too, make this a little bit easier. We're going to pop the rear pin out. I'm going to pull the pin. I'm going to pull the pin all the way out. And now I'm going to open the receivers. There you go. Oh, one on the floor. One sec, let me grab that spring. Okay, so as you saw, the dual guide rod system, while very neat and extremely smooth on the bolt carrier, this plug wears, and as it wears, it tends to come flying out the rear of upper receiver when you take it apart. Now, let's have a look at our internals here. Bolt handle, very simple, slots in, drags against the upper receiver at the top here. Let me see if we can get it focused there. You can see that little shiny mark. That's wear. That's from it dragging along the aluminum upper. Not a big deal. The original AR-18s had a very wobbly handle to them anyway. Bolt carrier, very, very little wear on this. This thing basically glides on those rods. It is such a smooth action, and you can see how filthy it is up front. I haven't cleaned this for a little while, so it's got some good coating of grime on it, especially from shooting it suppressed. You can see where the gas piston wax up there, that little shiny spot. But no deformities, zero issues with bolt, no bolt damage at all. All this comes apart really easy. It does have a spring-loaded bolt to it. The bolt actually gets pushed forward, which is kind of neat. Maybe that's for cushioning. I don't know exactly the mechanical reason for that. If you know, let me know. I'd be happy to learn. But there's where our guide rods go into. Really no appreciable wear on the pressure bearing components here. And the barrel also looks just great on this thing. But that's to be kind of expected. It's a nitride barrel with a low round count. You may notice that the bolt doesn't like to always seat when it doesn't have the guide rods. That's because this thing basically is floating inside the upper receiver on these rods. So once these rods are in, now we have our very smooth bolt carrier. So anyway, those are the two components that have really worn on the BRN-180 upper receiver. Now I want to talk about something up front. And there's two things that we should really talk about. We're going to talk about gassing, and we're going to talk about heat. So first off, if you buy one of these and you intend to use it suppressed, that's great. These things run amazing unsuppressed, and their unsuppressed settings have always been perfect for me and never had an issue with them. Their suppressed settings, the Gen 1 had two interchangeable cups that you could put on the end of the piston. You could swap them out if you wanted a suppressed cup or a unsuppressed cup. And those worked actually really, really well for me, and both were tuned just about right. Now, the Gen 2, they went to a two-position gas block, which is great because you no longer have to pull the handguard off, which there's a little bit of an issue with that I'll get into in a minute. But you don't have to pull the handguard off. You can just use a screwdriver from the front. But their ports are very specific to certain back pressures. And the one that ships with is very, very small, or at least the one that mine shipped with was very, very small. I had to drill out the port on the suppressed gas suppressed gas setting of the regulator up here to get it to work with my extremely overboard hybrid 46, which is a 46 cal suppressor. So not mad at Brownells at all. That's not their fault that they didn't tune it for my specific suppressor, because they should have known that I was going to put this suppressor on it. But now that I have a Sandman S, I find that it's slightly gassed a bit more. But honestly, it was gassed so just on the edge of working reliably, but beautifully gassed with this, that the little bit more gas helps with reliability a little bit, and it's honestly probably a good thing. Now, there's a complication with the front end of this gun, and I'm going to talk about that real quick before I get into heat, and that is pulling this entire assembly apart. This muzzle device does not fit through this handguard. It definitely doesn't fit through the collar at the base of this handguard, because remember, this thing has this set screw at the bottom. This collar basically is a tight fit over the barrel, and the set screw tensions it up to hold it in place. With the with this collar, it's not wide enough to go over this muzzle device. If you want to know the widest thing that this collar can fit over, measure the original muzzle device that this thing comes with, which it comes with like a lock nut and a 3-prong. That's about the thickest muzzle, or the widest muzzle device you can get through this collar. So anyway, that's an issue because every time I want to adjust the gas port on this, I not only have to disassemble the gas system on here, I have to get the handguard all the way off, and to get the handguard off, I have to pull my concentricity, important muzzle device off as well. So it's a bit of work. You also have to pull off your accessories because they do not clear the, if I remember, one of these didn't clear the gas block. But anyway, guys, that's a complication. Another thing that would be really nice is if Brownells and BRN-180 or the BRN-180 design took into account something that FM Products did, which I really wish FM Products would make Brownells do this because it makes sense. And that is to put flats. You can see that flat spot on the top of the barrel behind the muzzle device. That's so you can get a wrench on there. You can get a wrench on the barrel. That is so nice because this barrel is not compatible with bev blocks or reaction rods. Since your barrel is torqued into a trunnion that has your locking lugs, you don't want to put your force on the locking lugs because now you're putting force on the threaded in barrel. So I ended up having to make myself some vice jaws so that I could clamp on this tiny bit of barrel here, when you could just have a flat. They don't even have to be straight up and down. Flats anywhere on here so that you could just get a wrench on it and then you could do your muzzle work, and that would be a lot easier. So that's something Brownells really should add. That would add a lot of value to this, in my opinion. I've been trying to get some kind of neat heat footage of various firearms, and I tried it with this gun as well. And partially because I got a thermal monocular I can do that with, and because this gun has some heating qualities that some people really don't like. And that is the handguard gets quite warm. The handguard is quite thin. Well, I should say it's well built, but it's skinny. And the barrel is quite close to the handguard. So a lot of the barrel's heat is going to radiate to the handguard. It also doesn't help that since this is a gas piston design, you're not dumping any heat into the bolt carrier to the rear through a tube. So your gas gets dumped up here. Your barrel gets all hot. From this mounting point forward, you basically just get extra heat. So that's why the wrap's on here. I have some thermal footage that, I don't know if it shows you the wrap working really much at all, but it helps insulate you from some of that heat. And that's why it's there. All right, guys. So I think that's a fairly good summary of my time with the BRN-180. This gun has been very reliable when you have it gassed correctly, or without the suppressor on there, set to unsuppressed. Extremely reliable. Accuracy, you know, everyone tells you their AR is 1 MOA capable because they at one point shot a 3-round group at ½ an inch or some ludicrous thing. It's as accurate as you're going to be. It's definitely more accurate than I can be with irons. It's definitely not a 4 MOA gun. You know, it's more accurate than that. That said, BRN-180 really matured from its Gen 1. As an early adopter, I was really thrilled with how it first shot. Now I'm just so thrilled that it's right and it works well. There are a few improvements, like, you know, putting flats on the barrel would be a very easy improvement that they could do. Widening the handguard a little bit potentially, but you know, even that's just kind of like, well, I put that muzzle device on, and so maybe I should have just taken that into account. Anyway, guys, let me know if you have any questions. I hope this was useful to anybody that's interested in the BRN-180 platform. I'm happy to talk to anybody, and I hope you guys all have a good weekend.